Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest edition of the Premier League betting show here on YouTube with myself, Matt Hill, and my regular co-host, Brad Walker. If you're watching the Premier League betting show for the first time, welcome along. Good to have you on board. Basically, what we do on the show, nice and simple, over the next half an hour, we'll be running you through all 10 fixtures from this upcoming Premier League weekend and giving you a best bet in each game. So hopefully, mark your card with a few winners ahead of a busy weekend of action in England's top flight. And that's what we did last weekend. We had some good winners, highlighted by Chris Wood, anytime goal scorer, and Moises Caicedo booking. We had Wolves on the Asian handicap at Liverpool, which landed as well. Brad, I know you had a couple of winners up too. So generally, a profitable week once again. We're in quite good form at the minute. I don't want to jinx it, but seems to have got our eye in finally.
Yeah, fingers crossed it continues this weekend, even though there is one of my best bets, which I'm kind of hoping doesn't come in. But we'll get to that, I'm sure, in due course.
Okay, well, pride does come before a fall, so we won't get too confident, but I am feeling good about this week's fixtures. Let's see if we can keep the good times rolling. We have a Friday night game to kick things off, and I'm going to take care of this one. It is Leicester who hosts Brentford at 8 p.m. And if you want my comprehensive preview of this game, you can head over to oddsnow.com, where we have a bunch of written content ahead of the Premier League weekend, as well as some boxing previews, big weekend of boxing coming up as well. So make sure you head over to oddsnow.com for all of our latest sports betting previews. Well, Leicester versus Brentford. This is another big game for Leicester, isn't it? As they desperately look for points in their bid to beat the drop. It's not going well, I think it's fair to say. Only a spirited defeat last time out against Arsenal. They went down 2-0 in the end. Both goals come in the last 10 minutes of the match from makeshift Arsenal centre-forward Mikel Merino. But Leicester, it was an improved display, but ultimately, when the cards are on the table, it's now 9 defeats in 10 in the Premier League for Ruud van Nistelrooy's side. And other than that freakish win away at Spurs, they are sinking without trace, really. Goals have been a massive problem, particularly at home, actually, where at the start of the season, I think Leicester, I seem to recall, had a really good run of scoring in every game they played in. Well, they're now 5 home games in a row without scoring a single goal. And that'll be the music to the ears of a Brentford team who have had a complete 180 flip on their form. For the first part of this season, they were irrepressible at home and dreadful away. And now they've kind of flipped that round in recent times. It's now 5 home games without a win for Brentford, but they're 4 unbeaten on the road, and they've won their last 3 on the road, including last time out, a 1-0 win at West Ham. Kevin Schade with an early goal there. In truth, if any team was going to score more in that game, it was Brentford. Johan Visa had a couple of goals disallowed in very tight offside calls. They won the XG battle very comfortably, as they did in their other previous away wins against Crystal Palace and Southampton. So the form book definitely pointing towards a Brentford victory here. And I was a little bit surprised to find that you can get north of even money on the Brentford win at the time of speaking. So we're doing this on Thursday afternoon. I think they might go off closer to odds on, to be honest. But at the moment, there's some 21-20 available on Brentford to win this match, and that looks worth taking to me. Keep it very simple there. That's a 1-point win. Now, I do have another fancy on this match, and in my written preview, I did actually put Kevin Schade, anytime goal scorer, at 11-4 up as well, which I wouldn't put anybody off because he's certainly in great form. He scored in all of those wins that I mentioned there, 3 in his last 3 away games. So he's a man in form. But it's actually in the fouls market where I'm having my alternative bet this week. And it's a Leicester centre-half, Caleb Okoli. He's only recently come back into the team under Van Nistelrooy. He played a string of games at the start of the season, Italian centre-half, signed from Atalanta in the summer. Then he was dropped by Steve Cooper around November, and he's been limited to kind of cameos since. However, since he's come back into the team, he's averaged a foul every 35 minutes. So I was really surprised to see that over 1.5 fouls in this game is 16-5 with Betfair, north of 3-1. Now, he committed 3 last time out against Arsenal. He committed 2 in the FA Cup loss to Manchester United. And as I say, I managed to squeeze 1 in a cameo against Everton as well. So as assured as he has looked compared to some of his Leicester teammates, he does quite like a foul. And this is a speedy Brentford back line that he's up against again. So over 1.5 Accorley fouls with Bet365, and Betfair is just north of that 3-1 mark. So yeah, wouldn't put anybody off that one either. So that's my take on the Friday night game. Brad, we're into the Saturdays with an early kickoff. David Moyes taking on his old club as Everton host Manchester United. Manchester United in somewhat of a crisis. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Can Everton extend their recent fantastic run of results?
Yeah, the feel-good factor has continued, hasn't it, at Goodison Park after they picked up that impressive 2-1 win at Crystal Palace last weekend. They've now only got one loss in their last 6 matches, and that came in the FA Cup against Bournemouth. In fact, their 1-0 home defeat to Aston Villa in Moyes' first game, David Moyes' first game since returning to the club, is their only loss in the league since he's taken charge. And he's also been juggling injuries to some key players, the likes of Dwight McNeil, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and now Iliman Ndiaye, if I can pronounce his name right, are all out. Decore, of course, is suspended here as well following his red card against Liverpool. But David Moyes continues to pull the results out of the bag, and I'm sure he'll be confident of getting one over on his old side, as you touched upon there, Matt. Man United, I think it's fair to say, have been pretty dismal in recent weeks and recent months, in recent years, really. Not only did they lose to Tottenham last weekend 1-0, but failing to score, I think, against a Tottenham defence, which had conceded 12 goals, in their previous 4 home games in the league, is quite a worrying statistic. It means United are now in 15th behind Everton, who come into this one 14th. And United have also scored only 1 time in their last 3 league games. They're crying out for a striker. To be honest, they're crying out for players in almost every position, this Man United team. And Ruben Amorim, I don't think he could have possibly anticipated just how big of a task he's facing at Old Trafford in overturning the rot there. It looks like an absolute mountainous task, really, when you look at what's taken place in his early months in charge. United, they do come in 2-1 underdogs as a result of everything I've just said there, and I'm certainly not willing to back them at that price. Everton are favourites at around 13-8. I do want to get on side with them, but I am hoping to boost that price a little further, and I found a way of doing that. Everton's scoring problems were well documented earlier on in the season, but they've now scored at least 2 goals in 4 of Moyes' 6 Premier League games in charge at the club this season. They've also scored at least 2 goals in each of their last 3 at home in the Premier League too. And they face a Man United side who have averaged 1.4 goals conceded in the league this term. They've only got 1 clean sheet in their last 12 matches, Man United as well. So I am going to back the Toffees to compound Amorim's misery with another win here. And I'm sure, as we touched upon multiple times, Moyes will be happy to get one over on Man United. So the Everton win with over 1.5 goals at 5-2 with Bet Victor is a very appealing price for me. I think based on everything I've said there, although that price is shortening, so you're better off getting on side with that sooner rather than later to get the widest odds available. Yeah, but that's where I'll be going for this one in the early kickoff. Everton, again, picking up another impressive win. Well, can you call it impressive against Man United? But picking up another win over Man United.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can call it impressive at the moment. The absolute disastrous time for Manchester United, as you well referenced there, Brad. Well, plenty of 3 o'clock action for us this Saturday. We'll start with Bournemouth, who are at home to Wolves, and we don't need me to carry on my weekly waxing lyrical of Bournemouth, which I've been doing through the bad times and the very good times now. We're big fans of them on this show, Andoni Iraola's side, and they continue to go about their business very professionally. I thought this was a good marker of where Bournemouth are at now as a side. They went to Southampton, they won 3-1, and people were saying, oh, maybe it wasn't vintage Bournemouth. Well, that tells you everything you need to know about Bournemouth to have got themselves to a point where they can win 3-1 away from home in the Premier League, and people think that they haven't hit a particularly good level. It just shows that they really are one of the top performing sides in the division this year, and they just find a way of taking care of business. The goals are so well shared out in this Bournemouth team as well, which I love as well. They're not reliant on one player, perhaps like Nottingham Forest with Chris Wood or Chelsea with Cole Palmer. They really do spread the goals out among their forward players. Utah has been fantastic, I think, deputising in that centre forward role. It's not his natural position, but he's an absolute handful there, and supplemented by the likes of Semenyo and Clivert and all those players scheming in behind. They really are a fantastic team to watch. Europe firmly on the cards for Bournemouth. I hope they can get there and get over the line. I think as a neutral, you can't help but cheer for this Bournemouth team, who are just so entertaining to watch. In terms of that result maybe not being them hitting the standards, I'm not so sure, actually, because they were good in that game, but so was Southampton, and I think I'll come on to them a little bit later. But I don't think Southampton have been quite as bad in the last couple of games as they have been for most of this season, actually. So I think that was a good result for Bournemouth, actually. And they're taking on a Wolves side here who are still rooted in relegation trouble, sat in 17th coming into this weekend, but just 2 points clear of Ipswich and Leicester, so could easily end the weekend in the relegation zone if they don't pick up points here. They went to Liverpool on Sunday with little expected of them. And to be honest, it was a funny old game because Liverpool were well in command at 2-0. But when Wolves did get back into the game through their talisman, Matthäus Cunha, they had a period where they actually looked like they might go and get an equaliser without carving out any really great chances. They just suddenly found themselves having a lot of territory in dangerous areas. And it's hard to know how much of that was Liverpool kind of sitting back and having a bit of a wobble, or whether that was Wolves genuinely going through the gears. But I think you couldn't help but be encouraged from a Wolves perspective with the way they finished that game, if not so much how they started it. And I think everybody generally has the same feeling from what I can see when I read around, that Wolves do just have a bit too much quality, you feel, versus the other three teams in this relegation battle. You think that they're going to be okay, but until they actually go and do it and string the results together, it's hard to be overly confident. Well, the way I'm going to play this game, I do ultimately see Bournemouth prevailing, but they're quite short in the betting, as you would expect at home and given the form of the two sides. So I headed to the props market, as I often do when I can't call the win, draw, win. And I've landed on a Wolves player, actually, the aforementioned Cunha, who is 5-2 to score any time. And to be honest, Matthäus Cunha 5-2 any time against most teams in the division, I'd be tempted to take this. If Wolves are going to get out of trouble here, he is the man that is going to do it. He repeatedly looks like a player simply better than the team he's playing for. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to Wolves, but he could easily fit himself into a top 4, top 6 side, couldn't he? He just oozes quality. He can score from anywhere. He has a fantastic shot on him, and he constantly pops up in dangerous areas. And while there's a lot of uncertainty over Wolves' forward line, I think they're sweating on the fitness of Hwang Hee-chan as well, who've been in and out of the side this season. Obviously, Kaladzic, the big forward, has missed so much of this season as well. So they've not had much luck with their centre forwards, and repeatedly it has been Cunha that's come up with the goods and got them out of trouble. And he's got a fantastic record of scoring away from home as well, actually, which is worth noting for this particular bet. I think he scored 7 goals away from home this season as well. So lots to like about that 5-2. That's the way I'm going to be playing it. I do think Bournemouth will be prevailing, but when I look at the markets, that's the price that stands out to me. Go back over to Brad then. Ipswich taking on Tottenham, Brad, and good result for Tottenham, finally, against Manchester United. Can they build on it is the question now.
It is, yeah. And of course, Ipswich beat Tottenham at home earlier in the season, at Tottenham Hotspur, early on in the season, and battled to a point at Villa Park last weekend as well. Ipswich in a 1-1 draw, playing over half of that game with 10 men as well. It's a great result for Kieran McKenna's side, that they do still face a stern task, I think, in surviving relegation. They're currently 18th above Leicester on goal difference and are only 2 points adrift of Wolves. But Wolves, as you touched upon, they did show some positive signs last weekend that look to be picking up themselves. To answer your question, as you say, Tottenham will be boosted by that 1-0 win over Man United last week. That now makes it 2 wins on the bounce for them, following a 2-0 win at Brentford, which came a week prior. It's even more surprising, to be honest with you, that they managed to keep 2 clean sheets for 2 weeks running as well. It'd be a welcome change for Ange Postecoglou, who has, of course, I think, gotten used to some chaotic matches this term, usually at his side's expense as well. And some of his, it's been well documented, their injury problems, and some of those players are slowly returning to fitness as well. Vicario, of course, was back in goal last week. James Maddison started and scored the winner. The likes of Destiny Udogie and Brennan Johnson were on the bench as well. So there are some reasons for optimism for Tottenham fans. And they've also got a full week of training for the second week running too, due to having no European commitments to deal with, which again, I'm sure will be another welcome change for their manager. Tottenham do come in favourites at even money at the time of recording, suggesting a 1-in-2 chance of winning, of course. Despite that win over Man United, I'm still not willing to back them just yet, though. Ipswich are without a win in 6, but I wouldn't be totally shocked to see them win here, given Spurs' recent form prior to the Man United loss. They went with 7 games without a win across December and January prior to that victory over Brentford, which I mentioned a moment ago. And so, I'm going to stay away from backing a winner, I think, in this game, and instead go down the player props line. Ipswich have had a difficult time since returning to the Premier League, although I think most of us saw that coming. But there has been one man who's been a bright spark throughout the campaign, and that's young forward Liam Delap. It's hard to see him remaining at Portman Road beyond the summer, even if they stay up, in my opinion. He's already got 10 goals this season in the Premier League, which is impressive figures considering we're in, just past the middle of February, and for a side in a relegation battle as well. He scored at Villa Park last weekend, and I'm sure he'll be relishing playing against his Tottenham defence, who has averaged 1.51 expected goals against in away fixtures this term. They also continue to be without key central defenders in Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero, so there are still plenty of weaknesses for the Lap to exploit at the Tottenham back line. So I'm going to back him to score any time, which comes in at just over 2-1 generally, which was a surprise for me when I was putting these notes together. I think there's plenty of value there. Tottenham, okay, they've shown some promising signs in recent weeks, but I'm still yet to be convinced that they're completely out of that rut. And so, I think that's a worthy price in backing with the Lap scoring any time at just over 2-1.
Yeah, he's so often been the man for Ipswich this season, hasn't he? He's really, really impressed Liam Delap, someone we constantly seem to talk about on this show, and hopefully he could do the business again here for Brad. Back over to me then for Southampton, who are at home to Brighton, and Saints still rooted to the bottom of the table. But as I said, some positive signs in the last couple of outings. They got a great win at fellow strugglers Ipswich, which, to be honest, if they hadn't managed to win that game, I think they would have been dead and buried. Now they're 10 points adrift of safety, so it's a stretch to say that they've still got a chance of staying up. But I think I was having a look at their fixtures earlier. They've got 3 tough old games here. They're at home to Brighton, away to Liverpool, away to Chelsea. I think if they can keep the gap at 10 or even reduce it somehow, their next game is against Wolves. And maybe if they go and win that and the gap gets to 6 or 7, maybe you start to consider that they have a sniff. But really, it does look like they're dead and buried. They'll continue to fight, I'm sure. And Ivan Juric came in under extremely difficult circumstances. At least he's getting a little bit of a tune and improvement out of his squad. One thing I think you can say about Southampton, they do have goals in them. They generally do go down fighting. Yes, they've taken a couple of pacings this year as well, but they've played some good attacking football. I think the main criticism of them was under Russell Martin, when their pragmatism just was non-existent and they were just playing pretty football, if you like, possession football against all comers to little to no effect. I think if Juric had been in charge all season, we might be talking about a Southampton side much closer to safety, because I do think there's got some quality in the ranks, particularly in forward areas. But this is going to be a tough game, as a reference again to Brighton side, who have been a little bit up and down at times this season, but very much on an up at the moment, I would say. Forward players in really good form. Great win against Chelsea last weekend. They're following up a win against Chelsea the weekend before as well in the Cup, and then repeated defeat in the league in more impressive fashion, you certainly could argue. And when Brighton's forward players are ticking, you really do have cause to be worried. The likes of Matoma, Minter's been a fantastic addition, I think, as well. So they're going to cause problems against Southampton, aren't they? And you can probably tell by the way I'm talking here, but I'm anticipating goals in this game. I think Brighton are very worthy favourites, but they're quite short. They're around that 1.6 mark, which is plenty short enough for an away side, I think, especially with a side like Brighton, who, as good as they are against the leading lights in the division, sometimes they do throw in the odd stinker against one of the very bottom sides. So they're a hard team to trust when they're really short odds. I always think Brighton. I'd much rather be with them in a tough game than be, lumping loads on them in a game where they're massive favs, particularly on the road. So with that in mind, I'm going to play the goals. And I thought the way of playing it, given I like Southampton's chances of getting on the score sheet here, both teams to score and over 2.5 goals in the game. So this kind of covers a number of outcomes. We just need Southampton to score, and then we just need chaos to reign, basically, which is what I see happening. Now, this is drifted out to even money with Ladbrokes and Coral. It's odds on elsewhere. It may continue to drift. You might get a little bit above evens, but to be honest, anything around that even money mark, I would make value. And that's where I'll be playing my money here. So we shall see if that game proves to be as entertaining as I think it will. Back over to Brad. We've got one of the title contenders in action here, Arsenal at home to West Ham. They continue to apply the pressure to Liverpool. It was a little bit of a laboured effort last time out, I think it's fair to say, against Leicester, but got the job done in the end. And they just have to keep asking questions, don't they, Brad, really?
They do, yeah, and I think their ears will be perking up with Liverpool's recent results and certainly Liverpool's recent performances, which we'll come on to later in the show. They've certainly not convinced in recent games, the leaders, and Arsenal can close the gap to 5 points with a win here ahead of Liverpool's game at Man City the following day. They are in superb form in the Premier League, to be fair to them, Arsenal. They've not lost in the league since a loss at Newcastle at the start of November. They've won each of their last three and kept clean sheets in 2 of those games as well. And have they found a solution to their forward problem? Who knows? But Mikel Moreno, usually in midfield, of course, deputised up top for the Gunners when he came on at Leicester and scored twice, 2 very good finishes as well to secure the 3 points.
Can I just tell you a little story about that while you mention it? I was listening to 5 Live whilst doing some work in the front room while that game was on, and they were really getting stuck into Arteta for playing Moreno up front just as he scored. And this, I think I might be wrong. I think it was Curtis Davis on commentary, and he said he's only got 36 career goals, and then he was 37, and then it was 38. So maybe just should have kept his mouth shut with that one.
Yeah, it's blown up right in his face, isn't it? I think there, but it was 2 impressive finishes as well. To be fair to him,
It was.
He really took both of those goals well. And look again, well, I doubt he'll be the long-term solution even for the rest of the season. Who knows? But I'm sure he'll earn another shot this weekend against the West Ham side, who are struggling for form under Graham Potter. They're now without a win in their last 4 in the Premier League. 3 of those games have ended in defeat as well, including the 1-0 loss at home to Brentford last weekend. While there's no real danger of a relegation fight for West Ham, they're 10 points above Ipswich in 18th. I still think they're falling well below the standards which are expected of them at the London Stadium. They did win 2-0 at the Emirates last season, but they haven't won consecutive matches at Arsenal since 2006-07, which was at Highbury as well. That wasn't even at the Emirates then. So, yeah, they're yet to win 2 seasons in a row at the Emirates in the Premier League. Maybe that changes this weekend. Who knows? But it is hard to make a case for an away win here. They are 12-1 underdogs at the time of recording West Ham, which is understandable given the recent results of the pair, particularly in this fixture as well. Arsenal have won by 6-0 and 5-2 scorelines in their last 2 games against West Ham. Both of those games were at the London Stadium, though not at the Emirates. And they also don't have the attacking depth this weekend that they had then, despite Mourinho's efforts last week. So while I do think Arsenal will win, I do expect it to be by a tighter margin here. So I'm going to go for an Arsenal win with under 3.5 goals. That comes in at even money, which I was pleasantly surprised by with multiple sports books. I think the bet that I put up, something similar for Leicester and Arsenal last weekend, came in. And yeah, I'm expecting another tight Arsenal win this weekend.
Yeah, I like that, because with the under 3.5 goals, it's not even a disaster if they concede as well. A comeback victory will still do it. And it's hard, like you say, to see Arsenal absolutely racking the goals up with their current injuries in forward areas. But yeah, I like that selection anyway, Brad. On to the final 3 p.m. of Saturday, which is Fulham, who are at home to Crystal Palace in an all-London affair. And Fulham having a good season, aren't they, really? And they're in and amongst that. They're in that pile of teams who will be dreaming of Europe. They're on 39 points, only 2 points behind Newcastle, which is quite surprising when you think of Newcastle, look banging for a Champions League spot until a couple of weeks ago. So shows how tight and compact it is. And Fulham's form recently has been fantastic. Aside from that freakish 1-0 loss to Man United via a deflected Lisandro Martinez strike, they've won all 4 of their other games in the last 5-game sequence in the Premier League. Through in the FA Cup as well, beating Wigan. So plenty to like about Fulham at the moment. They're not pulling up trees when they're winning. Most of these victories have been by a 1-goal margin, but that's enough. They do it without a minimum of fuss. I think they take on a Crystal Palace side, who have improved. I was disappointed last week to see them go down at Everton because like I say, results had been a lot better. And I think a home game with Everton, Glasner would have been expecting that form to continue. They slipped up at home to Brentford as well fairly recently. So it's becoming a little bit of a pattern with the home games, and I'm sure they'll want to snap that in the bud as quickly as they can. But away from home now, that's 4 straight victories in all competitions for Palace, all by a 2-0 scoreline, funnily enough. And I think that this improvement has undoubtedly correlated with the improvement of form of their main centre-forward, Jean-Philippe Mateta. He scored a brace away at West Ham, a brace away at Manchester United. and he scored against Everton last time out as well. So he's banging form. Now, Mateta, he's a streaky striker, isn't he? We've seen this last season as well. He goes on unbelievable runs and then he goes on unbelievable dry runs, but he's definitely on one of them hot runs at the moment. So when he's on a hot run, I would expect to see his anytime price for a game like this sub 2-1. So to see Bet365 offering 11-4 about Mateta anytime goal seems ginormous to me. And I think he's around 8-1 to score the first goal as well. So if you're in the business of first goal scorers, I mean, he is Palace's primary threat, isn't it? Everything goes through him, crosses into the box. He's so often the man making the running behind as well for the likes of Eze to pick out. So I do think Palace have a real chance of causing Fulham problems in their current form. And yeah, I think Mateta 11-4 anytime. I just don't think you can go wrong with that bet, really. So that's a really solid fancy from me here. Jean-Philippe Mateta anytime for Palace away at Fulham. Well, on to the 5:30 then before we tackle Sunday's two matches. That is Aston Villa at home to Chelsea. Could be a big game in terms of European football next season, Brad.
Yeah, Villa's 2-2 draw with Liverpool in midweek means they're now unbeaten in 13 home games in all competitions this season. I'm sure Unai Emery would have been pleased with his side's response to going 1-0 down in that game. They did actually turn it around before halftime, going 2-1 up, but they weren't able to hold on for the full 3 points, but still a point against the league leaders is still a solid result for them. Marcus Rashford and Marcus Asensio as well making their first starts. Daniel Marlin came off the bench and almost scored a winner in the dying seconds as well. Ollie Watkins scoring again. It just speaks to the wealth of attacking options that Villa have at their disposal right now. They are struggling with injuries in defence, granted, but they welcome a Chelsea side who are struggling full stop. They've not won any of their last 6 away games in all competitions, Chelsea, and they've not scored more than 1 goal in any of those games either. They were beaten comfortably at Brighton last time out, 3-0, a run which has left them in 6th position, and they could be pipped by Newcastle in 7th this weekend too. I think it's been a really worrying turn of form since around December for Enzo Maresca's men. Villa's record in this fixture isn't great. They've only won 2 of their last 11 home games against Chelsea, but I am going to back them to add a third this weekend. Chelsea just look terrible at the moment. They can't buy a win. I'm sure if they would if they could, given their track record. But if you put their form and combine that...
Todd Burley's currently typing win into Y-Scout to have a look at his highlight reel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if they could... find somewhere getting some points on the board using their deep pockets, I'm sure they'll explore that option. But yeah, they're missing key players as well. The likes of Wesley Fofana, Mario Gusto, Romeo Lavia, Nicholas Jackson. They look very depleted. If you add in their poor run on the road as well.
Jackson's a big miss for them, isn't he? Because he even when he's missing chances, he's in the right areas.
He links up with Cole Palmer while
Yeah,
he's been struggling. I don't think he's had a goal in his last 4 Premier League games. And then, like I said, if you combine, all of that with their poor away form, Chelsea, and Villa's strength at home, I think back in the Villa win is a sensible pick. And it's particularly a very wide, in my opinion, 17-10. Not far off 2-1 there. And yeah, I think that's a price worth jumping on really with multiple sports books. This Chelsea rot, they seem to be spiraling right now when it's hard to see where their next win comes from. Like I said, they have a decent record in this fixture. That doesn't really mean anything, particularly when it's a new manager or a manager in his first season in charge. Unai Emery is a very good manager as well. Like I said, they could have easily have left Villa Park with all 3 points the other day against Liverpool. And so, yeah, I'm going to back them to go one better and beat Chelsea this weekend.
Okay, Aston Villa to beat Chelsea, a resounding selection for Brad there. Well, only 2 games on Sunday due to that busy Saturday. So the early kickoff I will tackle as my last game, and it's Newcastle at home to Nottingham Forest. 2 teams, again, dreaming of Champions League football, which still feels a little bit weird to be saying with Nottingham Forest, but all credit to them. They're having a fantastic season. Newcastle... Well, they went to Manchester City last weekend, didn't we? And I think me and you, Brad, both fancied them at the prices 3-1, but they were victim to an absolutely rampant Omar Mamouche, who scored his first, second, and third Manchester City goal all in the space of 12 minutes to kill any chances of Newcastle winning that game. A bit of a funny one, really, because when that happens, it does kind of just kill the game as a contest. I'm not sure I'll be reading into it loads. I don't think it's particularly panic stations for Newcastle there. City are vulnerable, and they would have been eyeing that up as a potential chance to go to the Etihad and get something. But Equally, City have still got a lot of class in their ranks, and some days they're going to turn up and just do things like that. And I don't think it was a. I think if that you take out those 12 minutes, which is easy said, I don't think it was a crisis performance from Newcastle. Let's put it that way. Generally their results, if you go a little bit back on that, yes, they battled past Birmingham in the FA Cup, but they've been pretty rock solid, Newcastle, haven't they? They are the odd stinker, but generally still one of the form teams in the Premier League. If you're asking me right now, I still think they could get Champions League football this season. I think the fact that they're not in Europe is a big one. I do wonder whether the domestic cups could be an issue a little bit. Still in the FA Cup, got that League Cup final. We know how much they desperately want to win a cup, so it's balancing priorities a little bit there. But I don't know. I'm struggling to count them out of that top four race just yet. Nottingham Forest, well, they're still firmly in the top four race, aren't they? But for how much longer can they hold on and maintain this fantastic season, because they fell to a 2-1 defeat at Fulham last time out, a damaging 2-1 defeat. Chris Wood still did the good for us, though. I put him up anytime scorer at 3-1, and he obliged equalising after Emile Smith-Rowe put Fulham ahead. But Calvin Bassey's second half strike condemning Forest to a rare defeat, it's fair to say, but a damaging one nonetheless. They're 3 points ahead of Man City in third and 4 points ahead of Bournemouth in fifth. So, it as good as it's been for Forest, you really do have to maintain it when you're in this part of the league, or it can unravel very quickly, can't it? And this feels like a must not lose for me at Newcastle. If they're serious about top four, they need to go and, hang in there and dig a point out, really, because they've got Arsenal to come after this as well. Man City in coming weeks as well. So, big times, nervy times for Forest fans, but great to be involved in it. In terms of a best bet in this game, I'm going to the props market, and I absolutely love this one. Most fouled player in the Premier League this season. I couldn't believe my eyes when I fell on this stat earlier this week. Bruno Guimaraes of Newcastle is the most fouled player in the Premier League. He's been fouled 83 times this season. In second place is Anthony Gordon, who's been fouled 53 times. So that means that Guimaraes has been fouled 30 times more than the man in second. And for some context there, second, third, fourth, and fifth are all like 53, 52, 51. So he is the absolute anomaly in the Premier League. He's just a foul magnet. Now, the betting markets have somewhat taken this into account, because your average player to get fouled once in the game, maybe about 4 to 6. Guimaraes is down at like 1 to 3, as he should be. But over 2.5 fouls, or him to be fouled more than 2 times in this game, it's pretty much double your money. It's 10 to 11 with Betfair and Paddy Power. Now, he comes up against a Forest midfield who are extremely combative, particularly their captain, Ryan Yates, who's committed the 4th most fouls in the Premier League. And I do think that Yates is going to be the man tasked with trying to contain Guimaraes. And I think that it's a combination. If I could have a specific bet on Ryan Yates to foul Bruno Guimaraes, then I would probably be putting it up. But that's the main reason why we've got one of the most regular foulers in terms of midfielders up against the most fouled midfielder in the league here. So I think when you add all that together, and you've added in the fact that Newcastle are probably going to have quite a lot of the ball, as most of Forest's opponents do, and when Newcastle have a lot of the ball, Bruno has a lot of the ball, it just all points towards him being fouled. He's fouled on average 3.5 times a game. Will he be fouled over 2.5 times in this game? I think so. So I think that 10 to 11 is a cracking bet for me. Last game of the weekend, Brad, so often this would have been the game of the Premier League season. Not quite got that bill in this time round, but it could end up being a damaging one for Liverpool if Man City decide to turn up.
Yeah, I've got that written down in my notes, actually, Matt. This was in years gone by, the blockbuster clash. But Man City's sudden drop-off does mean that this is a meeting between the current leaders and a side looking for a spot in the top 4. There have been some positive signs for Man City of late. You mentioned there that win over Newcastle last weekend, 4-0, although that was sandwiched between losses to Real Madrid in the Champions League, which saw them fail to secure a spot in the knockout stages. They were taken apart by Kylian Mbappe in the second leg on Wednesday. The Frenchman, of course, scoring a hat-trick, making it 3 losses in their last 5 matches for Man City in all competitions. But as briefly mentioned earlier on in the video, Liverpool have not exactly convinced lately either. Results haven't been bad, to be fair. Still only 1 loss in the Premier League. That was against Nottingham Forest early on in the season. But performances have coincided with some drop points in the league now. They've only won one of their last 3 games. The other 2, of course, ending in draws with Everton and Aston Villa most recently on Wednesday. Both of those games finishing 2-2 as well. They were also left clinging on for life in that 2-1 win over Wolves last weekend. Didn't even register a shot in the second half at Anfield, which is a worrying statistic, I think, for Arne Slot. Liverpool, their games, they look so controlled during the first half of the season, but that has since changed. The games are suddenly very open, reminiscent of basketball matches, some of them, and they're giving chances away while failing to take their own. The obvious example, of course, is Darwin Núñez. I'm sure everyone's seen his glaring miss at Villa Park in midweek. I feel sorry for him, but you've got to be burying that. If Liverpool they had the momentum in that game at the time of that chance. If he puts that away 3-2, you'd have to back them to go on and secure all 3 points and move 10 points clear. They're now only 8 points clear. Of course, it's still a very strong position, but Liverpool and Arne Slot won't want this trend to continue for much longer. Despite this, the away side do come in favourites at 11-8 at the time of recording. Although they haven't won at the Etihad in the Premier League since 2015 and Jurgen Klopp's first season in charge. They have got a win in the Champions League since then, but in the league, they've struggled to go and get the 3 points at the Etihad. There have been their fair share of draws since. I think there's 3 of the last 5 meetings at the Etihad between these two have ended level. The odds are a little too tight to back Liverpool, I think, based on the recent performances. City do still have quality in forward areas as well to take chances if they're awarded them. And one man who was particularly stood out, of course, Matt, you mentioned him a moment ago, is Omar Marmoush, the Egyptian, scoring a hat-trick against Newcastle last weekend, causing havoc with his runs in behind. Whether he's going to be partnered by Erling Haaland remains to be seen. Haaland was missing for that Real Madrid match, the second leg. But I do think Marmoush could cause that Liverpool defence real problems, particularly if he's running in from the left-hand side, attacking Liverpool's right between Trent Alexander-Arnold and Ibrahim Konate. That's the side of the defence that opposition teams tend to target when playing Liverpool. And Liverpool's defence overall, as I said, do look shaky right now, and I think Marmoush could exploit that. So him to score any time at 5-2 generally is a prize worth jumping on for me. I am a Liverpool fan, so I hope I am very wrong with this. But yeah, that's where that's a prize which stands out if you have to put your allegiances aside. I think 5-2 is very fair when you consider everything I've just said.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And to be honest, you make a good point about Konate and Alexander-Arnold. I think City will flag that area as somewhere that they can exploit. And his runs in behind against Newcastle, they really were devastating. So, yeah, excited to see Marmoush in the coming weeks, actually. And just as he adapts to the Premier League even more, he looks like he could be a real great signing with next season in mind. Maybe after this weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. Just time to recap our best bets for the weekend, starting with yourself, Brad. Up on the screen there. If I had to push you for a best bet, what would it be?
I can't pick Marmoush. I'm going to go Everton. Everton. Oh, I don't really want to back Everton either, but I think that price is very fair. Or the Villa win, I think, as well, is something worth jumping on to.
Yeah, I like Everton. I like that shout for Everton. I think Man United is just in a real mess at the moment, and Everton at other side of the scale, really on a high from the results and feel good factors back, and it makes a big difference, I think, and at home as well. I think that 5-2 is massive, to be honest. Well, my best bet would probably, I like a couple of them this week. I do like the O'Coley fouls in the Friday night game at 16-5. I think that's a big price. And I like my Bruno Guimaraes shout as well. So, yeah, I'll go with Caleb O'Coley fouls, 16-5. It's the biggest price on there. And yeah, just the fact he's making a foul every 35 minutes since he come back into the team, and the pace in that Brentford forward line with Sharda and Burmo, I think that's a bit of a risk, to be honest. So yeah, let's see how we get on with that one. But thanks for watching the Premier League Betting Show. Give us a thumb up if you enjoyed the show, and we'd love to hear what you're backing this weekend in the comments. Plenty more content to come on Odds Now over the coming weeks. So make sure you subscribe and join us for the journey. We'll be back next week. See you soon.